Hey, Lions Nation! We're back with another exclusive video bringing you all the latest news about our beloved Detroit Lions. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss anything about the team. Now, let's get into the news. They said rivalries were carved in tundra and steel, born on frozen afternoons, and carried on buses that rattled down I-94 with frost still clinging to the windows. But nothing in the long, prickly history between Green Bay and Detroit felt as jarring, as audacious, as the moment RASHAN GARY stepped off a midnight flight at Detroit Metro in a plain black hoodie and a shallow grin. The kind that says a decision has been made and there's no turning back. He kept his head down as he moved, yet the airport seemed to tilt toward him anyway, as if the gravity of the Motor City had quietly tightened its hold and pulled a star out of Wisconsin's sky. By the time he slid into the back seat of a waiting SUV, the whispers had already outrun him to Allen Park. The relentless edge who ate double teams for breakfast and set fronts on fire with one long-arm jolt was coming to the Lions, and an era in the NFC North had just been shuffled like a deck on a table with a wobble nobody noticed until the cards spilled. In Green Bay, they would spend days dissecting the timeline, looking for the microscopic fracture point where inevitability began. Some would trace it to a moment of silence in the training room 2 seasons ago, that thin hush that follows a rehab milestone and leaves a player alone with his reflection and the future knocking softly. Others would point to the way the Packers' defense was reinventing itself, slanting, disguising, flipping calls like coins at the line, while Gary's job remained brutally simple: wreck the launch point. He did it again and again, a drumbeat through winters that wrapped themselves around Lambeau like a wool coat. He was the storm within the storm, and the division knew it. But even storms migrate. Even storms find new lakes to gather above when the geography is right and the temperature drops. Just so. In Detroit, the geography is not mountains or coasts. It's factories reborn as tech labs, breweries blinking into the night along streets with stubborn names, murals in Corktown that tell you a city can be broken and then decide that breaking is not the end of the story. It was never accidental that Dan Campbell's voice sounded like gravel in a pickup bed, and that Aaron Glenn coached defense with the posture of a man who has seen driveways shoveled before sunrise. The Lions were building a roster that could survive January by making August hard, and they were honest about it. They didn't pitch sunshine to free agents. They offered long meetings, loud practices, and the kind of accountability that makes leaders walk taller because there's nowhere to hide. When the door opened for an edge with rare traits, first step like a trap snapping shut, leverage that collapses chests, hands that talk in sentences, Detroit didn't ask whether he fit. They asked whether they were prepared to let him change them. The phone call started quietly, as they always do. A hello in early morning, a conversation that begins with respect and winds into possibility. The Lions staff had seen every snap of Gary's last 2 seasons, cataloged his counters, charted the subtle shifts in his alignment when he smelled a screen, studied the way he kept his shoulders square on zone red to force the quarterback into muddy footsteps. They saw the violence set to a metronome, but they also saw the patience. Not every rusher understands when a game demands fury and when it demands restraint, when you throw the haymaker and when you become a whisper in a tackle's ear, convincing him he's safe until he isn't. Detroit's front office, equal parts spreadsheets and scars, came to a conclusion that felt simple and seismic. There was no player in the market who could walk into their building and shift the center of gravity like RASHAN GARY. Negotiations are never straight lines, and this one had hairpin turns. Green Bay did not exactly watch a cornerstone drift toward their rival with folded arms. They argued cap and structure, argued role and legacy, argued the special thing that happens when a star is allowed to finish a sculpture where it began. There were late-night messages and early-morning recalculations, and those who were in the rooms will tell you nobody took it lightly, not for a second. But every organization writes its own thesis, and the Packers' thesis, spawned from decades of cautious craftsmanship and 1,000 small bets, kept running into Detroit's counterargument: urgency. The Lions were not pretending to be something they weren't. They had been the punchline and the promise, had walked off fields to boos and parades, had sold hope so many times that hope finally grew teeth. And now, they insisted, hope required teeth at the edge. When the visit became official, It wasn't the steakhouse dinner that convinced him. It was the walkthrough on a field where the lines still smelled like paint, and the script for a Wednesday practice looked like a plan to undo the comfort of an offense one snap at a time. Aaron Glenn didn't make a pitch so much as an invitation. Here is where we deploy you. Here is where the slide protection dies. Here is where the quarterback drifts one step too far and you arrive. Here is where we scratch the playbook margin because you took something away we didn't even think about taking. Then they showed the tape of Aiden Hutchinson on a loop. Hands inside, eyes peeled, a play lengthened by a heartbeat until he took it. They let the images ask the question, what do you think offenses do when they can't send the help both ways? He stayed longer than expected. He asked about the weight room, the rehab staff, the way the team handled Thursday travel. He asked about noise in Ford Field and whether the turf felt fast underfoot with the roof buzzing. He asked about the Tuesday film club the defensive line had started on their own, a small fellowship where a rookie could correct a veteran if the truth demanded it. When he left the facility, sunset gnawed at the horizon and the parking lot lamps lit one by one like synapses. There are moments in a career when every detail becomes important. When the feel of a hallway replays in your head, when a coach's offhand comment bores into the future and glows there, pulsing. He carried those moments out with him, and by the time he put his phone in airplane mode for the short hop back to Wisconsin, his mind was no longer on departure as loss. It was on arrival as responsibility. The announcement was a tremor that turned into a wave. Detroit's social accounts broke the seal with a clip, a pen, a paper, a handshake, and a cut to a slow-motion roar inside Ford Field that rattled through speakers in living rooms from Dearborn to the Upper Peninsula. It was not just the getting of a player, it was the getting of a message. The Lions were not interested in nibbling at the edges of respectability. They were interested in violence measured and moral, the kind of physical standard that forces opponents to stare at the schedule in late November and wonder whether body and mind will be intact afterward. Within hours, the offense had chimed in. Linemen texting each other wry warnings about Wednesday practice. The quarterback dropping a wink emoji nobody mistook as anything but a promise to keep the chains moving while the defense did the demolishing. Hey, signing is a headline, but the real story starts in the quiet spaces, and RASHAN GARY is most dangerous there. Watch him early on a Thursday, hood pulled up, tape looped around his wrists like vows. Watch him study ankles, the tackles, the tight ends, his own. Watch him time how many times the staff needs to yell set before the scout team offense breathes at the wrong moment. Watch him breathe through his diaphragm, a steady pull and release that turns his chest into a bellows and keeps his mind at the precise temperature where instinct and intention meet. He will tell you with a small smile that this is where he wins. The sack is the camera's favorite thing. He loves it, sure, but he knows football is often decided in places where only linemen look, decided by a half second in which he convinces a man who weighs 320 pounds to plant his left foot when it should be his right. The first joint rush with Hutchinson in a Lions practice was almost unfair. They set up a simple five-man protection against a play action that drew the running back's eyes to the flat. On the snap, Hutch took a half-step upfield to widen the tackle's frame and flashed hard inside like he was chasing the B-gap with a vengeance. The guard flinched that way, hand ready to pass off. Gary's first stride didn't look like a rush at all. It looked like a patient walk toward an appointment. Then the second stride came, low, coiled, hips pointed like a spear, and the tackle's chest tilted as if pulled by magnets. In those two heartbeats, the pocket collapsed from an angle the quarterback had not considered, and even though the play ended in a coach's whistle instead of a collision, everyone on the field understood they had just witnessed the outline of Sundays to come. There will be talk about his role against the run, as there always is when people reduce great edge defenders to highlight reels. Detroit, perhaps more than any team, will revel in how wrong that reduction is. Gary pleasures in 2nd and 8 more than 3rd and 10, because 2nd and 8 might be a stretch to the boundary where he can flatten the angle and force a cutback into traffic, and it might be a bootleg where the quarterback turns his back to the truth for a fraction of a second and re-enters a world already decided. He understands the cruelty of good run defense. It does not kill you in dramatic knife thrusts, it suffocates. It makes offensive coordinators call the plays they hate, and then defend those calls in press conferences with sentences that sound like apologies to nobody in particular. Before we move on, take a second to drop a like and subscribe. That way, you'll stay up to date with every exclusive Lions update, and you'll even have a chance to win an official Detroit Lions jersey. Let's keep going. How Green Bay handles the emotional reality will be studied the way historians study migrations, with maps and footnotes and attempts to explain how something so rooted could lift and drift. RASHAN GARY was never merely a set of pressures and sacks. He was a pillar that held up winter Sundays, a certainty in a sport that despises certainty. Teammates will say they're excited for him and mean it, and still feel a hollow ache the first time the Packers break the huddle and see him standing on the wrong color. Coaches who invested time and belief will remind younger players this league is a business, that jerseys are uniforms and not shackles, and then go home and stare at ceilings that look too big without a man like that under their command. Fans will do what fans do. Some will wish him well. Some will decide he never wanted it enough there. Some will turn his departure into a story about everything else they're worried about. All of it will be human, and all of it will be loud. In Detroit, the sound will be different. It will be the sound of a stadium that has been waiting not just to cheer, but to intimidate. Ford Field has at times been raucous and at times been resigned. It is now set up to be merciless. Imagine a third quarter against a division opponent. The Lions up a score, the crowd already pitched high by a long drive that bled 6 minutes off the clock. The offense on the other sideline finally gets a first down and thinks momentum has decided to be generous. Then Gary lines up in a wide 9. Hutch creeps late into a mug over the guard before bailing to the C-gap. Allen McNeil hovers like a fridge with a pulse over the center, and the noise grows teeth. The ball hasn't even been snapped, and the math is wrong. When the ball does leave the ground, Gary's first punch is so violent the tackle stumbles into a choreography nobody taught him, a stagger to the inside that opens the corner like a door left on the latch. The quarterback sees a color that is not his own and sails a throw, and now it is 2nd and 10 and the building is singing. Schematically, the Lions will turn Gary into a lever. They can set him as the force player and spill back to natural pursuit speed. They can long-arm a tight end into the lap of an outside zone until the back loses patience and cuts into a linebacker who has been waiting for exactly that. They can run T/E games with such sick timing that the center wonders whether he missed a memo, and they can flip him into a stand-up roll and walk him around like a ghost at 1.5 yards depth just to make a guard grip his thighs a little tighter in the stance. And then there is the blitz amplification, not because the Lions need to bring extra, but because now when they do, the offense has to pick poison, and poison is best served under bright lights. The human details will also write this story. A kid in Dearborn will bring a homemade sign with a lion's mane sketched over a number and hold it with both hands even when his arms start to ache. A security guard who has worked the field level for 15 years will tell a buddy this is the loudest he's heard it since the building opened, and the buddy will shake his head and say, "Not yet. Wait until the 4th quarter." A veteran on the offensive line will sidle up to Gary in the cafeteria and ask, very casually, how he set up that inside spin yesterday. And Gary will grin and break it down not like a secret, but like a language anyone willing to study can speak. Detroit has always been at its best when its heroes are teachers as much as they are conquerors. He will teach technique and patience and the art of turning rage into precision, and those lessons will outlive game plans. There will be a first sack in Honolulu blue, and it will feel like a cymbal crash. Maybe it will come on a Thursday night when the country is watching and the commentators are trying not to trip over each other's metaphors. Maybe it will be quiet, a hand swipe, a tumble, a ball that skitters free because violence and accuracy made peace in a single instant. Whatever it is, the celebration will tell the truth. Gary is not a dancer by nature. He is a roarer. He will find Hutchinson in the chaos, helmets clacking like cheers, and their body language will read like a book about partnership. Somewhere up in a suite, the general manager will exhale like he hasn't in months. Down on the sideline, a position coach will thump the chest of a backup who didn't play a snap and tell him this is why you watch every rep like it belongs to you. The first trip back to Lambeau will be something out of football literature if football literature allowed itself to admit how personal this sport can feel. The air will bite. Breath will hang in front of mouths like small ghosts. There will be handshakes that are real and eye contact that lasts 1 second longer than it needs to. Some boos will come because that is how ritual works, and some cheers will sneak in because even ritual can't drown out respect. He will look around the bowl that raised him in pro terms and know he is standing in a chapter that can only be written once. Then he will snap back to the moment because the ball is about to move and nostalgia does not beat cadences. There will be a tackle who remembers the first time they locked up, and a line coach who swears he knows Gary's tells, and a quarterback who will make his drop exactly the way they practiced. 1, 2 hitch. Only to find a shadow where daylight used to be. Beyond the headlines and the heat of divisional drama lies a quieter truth about decisions like this. They are not only about rings, but about meaning. Players at the level where the game starts to look slow to them are often drawn to places where their presence is not decoration, but amplification. In Detroit, Gary's strengths are valves and switches. He will open some, close others, and the whole machine will run hotter and cleaner because of it. There is a specific joy in knowing your work turns teammates into better versions of themselves. A slot corner gets another half second to break on an out because the ball comes sooner than the route wants it. A linebacker's tackle depth changes because the back has nowhere to hide. A safety gets to bait because the quarterback's platform is never level. A defensive coordinator sleeps, finally, and dreams of 3rd and 7s. It is fashionable to talk about windows in sports, because windows imply an architecture to competitive life that comfort us. Here is when you can, here is when you cannot. Detroit is uninterested in windows as metaphors. They are building doors and walking through them. Gary's addition is a door in a wall that looked solid from the outside. The league will watch the Lions step through and recalibrate its assumptions about what this team can be against elite offenses that do not scare easily. The Lions will not chase perfection. They will chase havoc measured out drive by drive until scoreboards tilt and opponents' play sheets get shorter and more desperate. There will be ugly wins that feel like brawls under fluorescent light, and there will be clinical afternoons where the defense looks like a surgical team moving in rhythm. People will ask whether Gary will wear the mantle of leadership, and the answer will reveal itself in small gestures, not speeches. Leadership will be a film cut he shares with a rookie who has watched it twice already and still can't see the tell, until Gary points to the tackle's inside toe and says, "There, right there." It will be the way he shows up on a Friday lift not to check a box, but to chase numbers with a grin. It will be the text he sends after a win that frankly wasn't good enough, the one that says the standard does not bend because the scoreboard was kind. It will be the handshake he offers to a practice squad call-up after a rep that made the room clap, the handshake that says welcome to the work. Detroit has been searching for a defensive face that scares without losing its smile. They had pieces, they had flashes, they had a vibe that felt like something blooming out of a winter ground. RASHAN GARY is the face and the force, the bloom and the root. His path here is a story about choices that look like betrayals until you zoom out and see they were simply the next true thing. Green Bay will carry on as it always has, with draft picks and development and the conviction that the whole outlasts any single part. Detroit will move, now, with a new cadence in its chest, a pace that says there is no need to apologize for growing teeth. If you want to understand how big this is, do not stare only at the numbers that will scroll across screens. Watch the first day of camp when the sun sits heavy and the air hums with the sound of cleats slicing grass. Watch the one-on-ones when the whistle is too far away to save a tired tackle and Gary's hands turn into arguments the body can't refute. Watch the team periods when the ball is snapped and the pocket bends the way hot glass bends under steady pressure. Watch the offense argue in healthy ways about protection calls because iron sharpens iron only if iron shows up angry. Watch the defense huddle around a rep that failed and listen to the way nobody blinks at hard words. Watch the head coach nod once, as if he asked the football gods for a gift, and they decided to be generous after all. There will be a December night when the division is in the balance and the stadium shakes in a way that makes broadcasters raise their voices to be heard. And there will be a snap where the right tackle sets correctly and the guard doesn't overhelp, and the quarterback steps up exactly as the chalkboard says, and still it will not matter. Gary will take 2 steps that look ordinary and then one that does not. That extra beat where the body becomes an instrument playing a note only a few can reach, and he will arrive with the force of a choice fully owned. The ball will come free, or the throw will die, or the drive will end in the silent way drives end when a rush wins by disrupting timing rather than by tearing cloth. The crowd will inhale and then exhale in one long ribbon of sound, and somewhere in the spill of that sound, the city will recognize itself. It is fashionable to talk about redemption arcs as if teams and cities were characters in a screenplay, but what Detroit has done, and what this signing crystallizes, is less cinematic and more elemental. They have decided to be the kind of team that imposes its will without apology. They have decided to build a front that does not wait for permission to end possessions. They have decided that history is a teacher, but not a warden. RASHAN GARY did not just cross a border in the NFC North. He crossed into a purpose that hums like electrical current through the halls at Allen Park and crackles into the night after practice, when players linger to talk about hand placement and angles like musicians arguing over chords. The city that bends metal and remakes it has added a piece of machinery that doesn't wear out easily, that runs hot and true, that changes the work of everyone around it for the better. So when you see him in that Honolulu blue for the first time under the lights, when the camera finds the look in his eyes that linemen recognize as the look of a man who has decided the next 6 seconds belong to him, remember the simple truth at the heart of all this noise. Football is a game of force applied with intelligence at precise moments. Detroit has acquired a master of those moments. The division will feel it. The league will adjust. And somewhere in the stories people tell about this city and this team, a new sentence has been added that carries weight even when spoken softly. The edge came to Detroit, and everything on offense started happening one step sooner than opponents wanted, one step later than safety allowed, one step into a future where the roar is not metaphor, but measurement. We bring you the latest Lions news every single day. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing. And of course, drop a comment below with your thoughts on today's news. Your voice makes a difference for Lions Nation. See you in the next video.